Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone's doing well. Having a good day so far. I had to take care of something really quick before I went to work, but I had a little extra time to spare, so I wanted to do a quick video before I went back into work on this channel. So this topic will be kind of a continuation from a video that I did earlier regarding women in the Jehovah's Witness organization, how they're valued and how they're viewed, and even how they're valued even outside of the Jehovah's Witness organization. And so if you're interested in hearing more, please stay tuned. So this video is kind of inspired by something that I saw on social media. It's a tweet I saw on Twitter, and I've actually included that tweet in a thumbnail. I blacked out the identity of the person because obviously I don't want them to necessarily be attacked for their opinion. And I respect that they felt the way they did about the opinion, and it was regarding Jehovah's Witness sisters and how they're kind of viewed in a higher light within the organization, but when they get to the real world, they're not valued as much. And so that was his opinion. Perhaps he was going through something with a Jehovah's Witness woman in his life, and maybe he felt the way he did, and I respect that. But it got me to thinking about even what I had to deal with when it came to looking at my self-worth growing up as a Jehovah's Witness woman, and even outside the organization. It really made me dwell on some things and thought about really what my value was, both within the organization and outside. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit today. So in my last video about women in the organization, I talked about their roles, some of the roles that they can take on in the organization. And if you looked at that video, I'll include it in the description box as well for your reference. But there are very few opportunities for women in the Jehovah's Witness organization. When it comes to running the organization, making the rules and enforcing them, only men are allowed to do those things. So you'll see men in the upper echelon, such as in the governing body. You'll see them being circuit overseers, which is the equivalent of traveling ministers who help enforce the Jehovah's Witness doctrines in the various congregations. And then, of course, you have your elders in your ministerial service who pretty much enforce the Jehovah's Witness rules within the local congregations. But as you figured out, no women are allowed in those capacities. But in effect, they're encouraged to pursue opportunities such as pioneering, volunteering their time, to knock on doors more often. In some cases, they're encouraged to help with building of Kingdom Halls or other Jehovah's Witness facilities. So they do encourage women in the organization to do various lines of work to help the organization. But as far as helping to take leadership in there, they're not allowed to do that. But even in order for you to kind of be somewhat valued in the organization, you're encouraged to take advantage of all the limited opportunities that you have. And in a sense, they say those things, if you pursue those things, you're valued in the organization, and you're looked at as more valuable, as more attractive, and even as a better, somehow that makes you a better marriage mate. And I noticed that a lot in the organization. If they made articles on women, of course they couldn't take leadership, but what in their mind, what made a good woman is women who were more willing to pursue those volunteering activities, and taking on those responsibilities in the congregation. But I noticed the reality of it was that while men were in the organization were valued based on the positions they had. So for instance, a man who was an elder would be valued as a more suitable person to marry than a person who was not an elder. I noticed with women, I feel like their value was a lot more surface. So I feel like the women that took on the extra responsibility, they were pioneers, They were helping out with the buildings and stuff. If they didn't have the looks, I don't believe they were valued. I saw so many sisters out there, like sisters who wanted to get married, and they were in their 40s, and they were, working hard in the organization, had gone hard for decades, and there was still not someone out there that was taking an interest in them. And so I noticed that looks were more important. I feel like Jehovah's Witness, the organization, kind of holds itself to the more traditional standards of beauty that are commonly accepted. So I noticed, as a black woman, I kind of tended to be more invisible than the people than the women who were non-black or who had more what they call exotic features and things like that. Those were viewed as more suitable people to marry or suitable people to court than, women who look like me. And so I noticed that was really a struggle for me, because you're raised to believe that, hey, if you take on these extra responsibilities, if you go to all the meetings, if you commit yourself to this organization and you're a faithful Christian woman, that will make you a suitable person. You'll be valued in Jehovah's eyes, and you'll also be valued, that will help you be more desirable to the Jehovah's Witness men. And I realized that definitely wasn't the case. So it's kind of a reality check when you realize that, and it really takes a number on your self-esteem. Another area where I feel like the self-worth and self-esteem of Jehovah's Witness women, or women raised in a Jehovah's Witness organization, is impacted is within the household. And to me, particularly when it comes to the male figures within the household. I feel like having a solid male influence within a child's life from a very young age is very important to help develop the self-worth of the person. I feel like for, a daughter or for a little girl, one of the first people that can make them feel beautiful and make them feel, that they're full of worth is their father or a positive male figure. And I even think of in my own household, with my husband and my daughter and my stepdaughter, it's a beautiful thing to see that interaction. And you can see where, my husband values his daughters, and he makes them feel beautiful by both telling them that they're beautiful and that they're worth so much, every day, and making them feel like they are valued, that their talents are valued, that their looks are valued, that everything about them is beautiful. And I think that's very important. And unfortunately, I feel like within the organization, even in a traditional family structure, that's kind of altered because the organization encourages you, they say, to put Jehovah first, but you're putting the organization first in your life, even above your family. So, as far as looking at yourself, how you feel about yourself, the confidence you have in yourself, that's considered being lofty and thinking about yourself too much. Your priority needs to be in devoting to the organization. So I feel like that's extremely dangerous, in my opinion. Devoting yourself to an organization and kind of taking away from making your family feel valued. So I feel like that's impacted even in the traditional family setting, when you have a father and a mother in the household with children, including daughters, and that father is spending so much time, putting so much emphasis on the organization, devoting all of his time and his energy in the organization, especially if he has a position in the congregation, such as an elder or ministerial servant, where he's devoting even more time physically within the organization. And that's kind of time taken away from being around his children and making, his children, specifically his daughters, feel like they're valued and feel like they're beautiful. And I feel like that's kind of a thing that's kind of missing. And I think it does have an impact on the self-worth of women in the organization. I can even think of my own experience. My biological father, he was there. I knew he loved me, but he physically wasn't living with me. So most of the time, as I mentioned in some of my earlier stories, my mom got remarried when I was 8, and it was my stepdad who was the father figure, in my life from day to day. And he went through a lot growing up too. So as far as his self-worth, that was impacted. And so a lot of that kind of, in a sense, kind of trickled in the way that he treated his daughters. And I feel like I still deal with issues to this day. I remember, and sometimes I don't know if he meant to be mean, but when I got old enough to be a marriageable age, my mom would talk about those possibilities of me getting married, finding someone within the organization, and his response would be like, well, who would want to marry Sylvia? And to me, that's very hurtful. That's a hurtful thing to hear from somebody that's supposed to be the father figure in your life. You want to feel valued. You want to feel beautiful. And, this person is basically saying you're not desirable enough to be somebody's, marriage mate. And so it's just in various ways in my own household and just in other households, you really see where too much devotion to the organization, along with other issues, can really impact the self-esteem of women in the Jehovah's Witness organization. I feel like also, in addition to just, as far as feeling beautiful and feeling valuable in the organization, in a sense, our talents are not quite valued as well. As I mentioned in my earlier video, there's so many women in the organization that have so many talents, so many things that they're gifted with, that they're made to put aside to devote themselves to the organization. And, to me, that's really sad, because instead of being made to hone in on those talents, to practice them, to even use them to be successful, they're kind of made to put those to the side, to devote more time to the organization. And so, it's just really sad. I think of for myself, I don't necessarily have a specific talent, but I know, I'm good at certain things. Academically, I did really well in school. I'm really, really good in math. And I can even think back, when I was, trying to pursue different things in high school. I used to go to math competitions or whatnot. And sometimes those things would, they wouldn't necessarily interfere with my meeting attendance, but I remember one kind of it kind of, the timing kind of mixed with the time that I was supposed to attend the meetings. But I just remember feeling guilty about that, and coming to the meeting and coming late, and it's made to feel bad for putting a math competition ahead of Jehovah or the organization, and just being made to feel guilty. But it's funny because eventually I became a teacher. I'm an educator now, and I'm able to use my gift of being really good at math to teach other people's sons and daughters how to understand math. And so I find that to be an interesting thing, how I was able to use something that I was good at to share with other people, whereas that talent was kind of not necessarily encouraged as I was growing up. I was encouraged to really devote my life to the organization. And so to kind of directly address the tweet in the thumbnail, I found it really interesting. And in a sense, I think it's true. But I honestly think the genders are kind of switched. Because I noticed that because Jehovah's Witness men are much more highly valued in the organization than women, because they're often able to pursue more opportunities, and they're also able to basically be used for more things to help promote the organization. Often they're placed on a very high pedestal versus women who have limited opportunities in the organization. So I often find that with Jehovah's Witness men, often what position you have in the congregation makes you more appealing than your looks. So, you know, sometimes Jehovah's Witness men, when they wake up, leave the organization, or if they leave the organization for various other reasons, I think they probably find that in the real world, those qualifications and those various things that made them appealing are no longer valid. So I feel like it's more of a struggle for them, because in the real world, you know, and women outside of the organization, they're not looking at if you used to be an elder or ministerial servant. You know, they want to see if you're a good provider, if you're a good communicator, if you have those attributes. And if you don't, you're going to have a hard time. That's the truth of the matter. Or if you know, you don't, in the looks department, if you're not someone's physical type, you know, and you find someone attractive and they don't find you attractive, you know, it's not going to matter that you used to be an elder or whatever. You're just going to have to, you know, kind of deal with the fact that you're not as appealing as you were within the organization. And so I think in a lot of cases, it is kind of a reality check for a lot of Jehovah's Witness men, where I'm pretty sure it's a struggle. On the flip side, I find with Jehovah's Witness women, because their opportunities are limited, and again, they kind of have to compete with the affections of the Jehovah's Witness men in the organization, because a lot of times in many areas, there are more baptized Jehovah's Witness women than there are men. So, you know, that's kind of a struggle. So, you know, I find on the flip side for women, when they leave the organization, they find on the flip side, you know, a lot of the qualities that they have make them more attractive to people on the outside of the organization. And I noticed that, you know, in my case, you know, when I was in the organization, you know, I was definitely bent on finding Jehovah's Witness man to marry. You know, that's kind of what is instilled in you. And that was what I was determined to do. When I kind of got a reality check that they were really no better than, you know, your typical man outside the organization. And in some cases, they might be worse due to some of the mentality that they had. Not all, but, you know, some, or a good number in the organization. I found outside of the organization, I was valued more. You know, I was treated a lot better. I feel like the relationships that they were looking for, they wanted to take things more seriously than, you know, the men inside the organization. But I felt like I was valued a whole lot more. I felt like my ranking, as that tweet says, actually went up instead of going down once I, you know, started kind of expanding my horizons and looking at relationships outside of the organization. So I feel like a lot of times the roles switch when it comes to when Jehovah's Witness men leave the organization, or when they have to step out in the real world versus women. I honestly think it's a lot easier for women. Now, of course, we still struggle with the self-esteem issues and self-confidence, but, you know, we find that we're much more valued in the world than we are in the organization. And I find it kind of even spills out in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community as well. I find that a lot of times the activism of men a lot of times get more views, as I mentioned in my last video, more views, more subscribers or whatnot than women who choose to be activists. And I wish that could be different. But at the same time, I understand a lot of the men who are activists, you know, they used to be in leadership roles such as elders. You know, they were at Bethel or whatnot. So they have a lot of inside information that a lot of women may not be privy to. So I do understand that. But I feel like, you know, whatever activism is out there is very valuable. And I think no matter what the gender is of whoever's, you know, exposing the Jehovah's Witness organization, that needs to be valued. But at the same time, I do notice, as far as when it comes to like the more prominent ex-Jehovah's Witness activists, I find like the ones that, you know, on occasion, some of the more prominent male activists sometimes don't take criticism as nicely as the women. And sometimes I wonder if it is because of, you know, some of the mentality that they may still have from being in a Jehovah's Witness organization. where, you know, men are kind of propped up on pedestals, they're encouraged and things like that. And women, they tend to get more criticized or whatnot. So I find a lot of times some of the more prominent activists who are men aren't as open to criticism. And so I hope that can change soon one day. Because at the end of the day, we're all human, we're all people. And we all, you know, we all have value, and we all have stories that we can tell that can encourage and help other people. So those are just some of my thoughts as far as, you know, self-esteem, self-image of women, and, you know, our self-worth, and even how I still deal with, you know, issues with those things to this day, where, you know, I'm working on it, but I still do care what people think of me, think of how I look, or, you know, my personality or whatnot. That's still a struggle for me to this day, and I'm still working on it. And I wonder how other women who were in a Jehovah's Witness organization, how they're dealing with their issues of self-confidence and self-worth. So I would appreciate a little input in the comment section to see what you guys have experienced with that. But thank you for taking the time to check out this video. I really appreciate the support, the likes, comments, and the subscribers. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Please continue to check out some of the YouTubers that are in the description box. Hope everyone's good. Much love.